Jasmine thought she'd found the hack. Rent jumped again. Her landlord raised it like it was a hobby, so she did what every sensible person does when the math stops mathing. She moved in with her sister. Couch, spare room, family, safety, and then the next month, her SSI check hits, and it's smaller, not a little off, not bank error, smaller by hundreds. Jasmine does what you do. She calls, she waits, she finally gets a human, and the human says a sentence that sounds like it belongs in a dystopian novel. If you're living in someone else's household and they're providing your food and shelter, we have to reduce your payment. Jasmine is quiet for a second because she didn't get a raise. She didn't win money. She didn't suddenly become less disabled. She just slept under a roof that wasn't hers and ate food someone else bought. Welcome to the most misunderstood part of SSI, living arrangements. Because on SSI, where you live isn't just your business, it's a number. And if you get that number wrong, the system doesn't just shrug, it invoices you. Now, why does this matter right now? Because Live with Family has become America's unofficial housing policy. When rent is eating entire paychecks, people do the obvious thing: combine households, share kitchens, split bills, crash on a couch just for a month. And SSI was built for a world where that kind of living was treated like a temporary exception and not the default. So today we're going to walk through it simply. No legalese, no scare tactics, just the real mechanism that turns my sister helped me into my payment is smaller. And by the end, you'll understand why SSI can feel less like a safety net and more like a sensor. Measuring your life month by month. Here's the foundation. SSI is not Social Security retirement. It's not SSDI. SSI is needs-based. It's basically the government saying, if you're aged, blind, or disabled, and you have very limited income and resources, we'll help you cover basic needs. Basic needs. That phrase matters, because the system defines basic needs as two things: food and shelter, not transportation, not debt, not your phone bill. Food and shelter, which means the system treats help with food and shelter as a form of income, even if nobody hands you cash. That's the first uncomfortable truth. On SSI, a free bedroom can act like income. A paid rent bill can act like income. Even groceries can act like income. Social Security has a name for this: in-kind support and maintenance. ISM. It's basically someone helped you with food or shelter. And SSI has two main ways it values that help. That's the first mental shift. Social Security is the delivery truck. Medicare is the toll booth. So where does the toll money go? Your Part B premium goes into the Medicare Supplementary Medical Insurance Trust Fund, the SMI Trust Fund. That fund pays for Part B benefits. It also helps pay for Medicare's administration, the machinery that processes claims and fights fraud. So you're not paying your personal doctor directly. You're paying into a pool that reimburses doctors and outpatient providers after you get care. You're buying access to a payment system. Now, the uncomfortable math. Most people assume the monthly premium is the cost of Part B. It's not. For most beneficiaries, the standard Part B premium is designed to cover about 25% of the expected cost. The other, roughly 75%, comes from federal general revenues, taxpayer money authorized by Congress. So your premium is not the whole price, it's your share. That's why it can rise even if you didn't change anything. It's not a careful, customized calculation. Even if the help you got was worth less than that, the rule can still hit at the full 1/3 amount if you meet the criteria, which is why people wake up and think, this has to be a mistake. It isn't. It's policy. Now that's Rule 1. Rule 2 is sneakier because it looks fair at first glance. This is the Presumed Maximum Value Rule, PMV. This is what SSI often uses when you live in your own household. But someone helps you with food or shelter, meaning you're not living inside someone else's household with them fully supporting you. You've got your own place, or your own household within a place, but someone is still paying something you would normally pay. Example: Jasmine has her own apartment, but her brother pays her rent 1 month, or pays the electric bill, or drops off groceries every week. SSI can count that as ISM. But instead of counting the full value of the help, SSI caps what it will count at the PMV. In 2025, PMV is one-third of the federal rate plus $20. One-third of 967 is 322.93 at $20. That's 342.33. So under PMV, the maximum amount of in-kind help SSI will count for an individual in 2025 is $342.33. Even if your sister paid $800 of your rent, SSI doesn't count $800. It counts up to $342.33. That sounds like mercy, and sometimes it is. It's one-third because the system assumes if someone else covered your food and shelter, you need less cash from SSI. In 2025 math, one-third of $967 is about $322, so Jasmine's maximum federal SSI could drop from $967 to around $645, just because she lived with her sister and the household provided her meals and a place to sleep. And here's the part that makes people feel like they're losing their minds, that one-third reduction is a blunt instrument. That's the first mental shift. Social Security is the delivery truck. Medicare is the toll booth. So where does the toll money go? Your Part B premium goes into the Medicare Supplementary Medical Insurance Trust Fund, the SMI Trust Fund. That fund pays for Part B benefits. It also helps pay for Medicare's administration, the machinery that processes claims and fights fraud. So you're not paying your personal doctor directly. You're paying into a pool that reimburses doctors and outpatient providers after you get care. You're buying access to a payment system. Now, the uncomfortable math. Most people assume the monthly premium is the cost of Part B. It's not. For most beneficiaries, the standard Part B premium is designed to cover about 25% of the expected cost. The other roughly 75% comes from federal general revenues, taxpayer money authorized by Congress. So your premium is not the whole price, it's your share. That's why it can rise even if you didn't change anything. Here's the simple version. Your AMI gets divided into chunks. The first chunk gets replaced at a high percentage. The next chunk gets replaced at a medium percentage. The final chunk gets replaced at a low percentage. Those percentages are basically the heart of the system. Roughly speaking, it works like this. The first portion is replaced at about 90%, the next portion at about 32%, and the rest at about 15%. Those cutoffs, where each chunk begins and ends, change over time. So don't get stuck on exact thresholds. But the shape stays consistent. The formula is front-loaded. It's generous early and stingy late. That explains a weird reality that people don't talk about enough. If you go from low earnings to moderate earnings, your benefit can rise noticeably. But if you go from high earnings to very high earnings, the benefit still rises, just a lot less than you expect, because that extra income is being replaced at the lowest percentage. Now, step 5, that result becomes your base benefit. That base benefit is called your PIA, primary insurance amount. Again, ignore the acronym if you want. This is the key idea. Your Social Security check begins as a base benefit calculated at your full retirement age. Full retirement age is basically the age the system considers normal for getting your standard benefit. And here's where a lot of people accidentally step on a financial landmine, because most people don't claim at their full retirement age. Here's the simple version. Your AMI gets divided into chunks. The first chunk gets replaced at a high percentage. The next chunk gets replaced at a medium percentage. The final chunk gets replaced at a low percentage. Those percentages are basically the heart of the system. Roughly speaking, it works like this. The first portion is replaced at about 90%, the next portion at about 32%, and the rest at about 15%. Those cutoffs, where each chunk begins and ends, change over time, so don't get stuck on exact thresholds. But the shape stays consistent. The formula is front-loaded. It's generous early and stingy late. That explains a weird reality that people don't talk about enough. If you go from low earnings to moderate earnings, your benefit can rise noticeably. But if you go from high earnings to very high earnings, the benefit still rises, just a lot less than you expect, because that extra income is being replaced at the lowest percentage. SSI living arrangement rules are often evaluated month by month, not this year, not since you moved, this month, which means one messy month can create a messy consequence. You stay with someone temporarily, it becomes the full month, and suddenly you're in one set of rules. Then you go back to your own place and you're in a different set of rules. That back and forth is one of the biggest reasons people get overpayments. Because if SSA pays you as if you're living independently, but they later decide you were actually receiving in-kind support, they may say you were overpaid. And SSI doesn't treat overpayments like oops, it treats them like debt. This is why reporting matters. SSI expects you to report changes that might affect your payment as soon as possible, generally no later than 10 days after the end of the month the change happened. So if your living arrangement changes in January, there's a clock ticking into February, and yes, people miss it because life is happening. You're moving, you're sick, you're dealing with family, you're trying to stay housed. Meanwhile, the system is quietly building a spreadsheet about your kitchen. Now, let's talk about the hype versus reality moment, because this is where well-meaning advice breaks people. The hype sounds like this: move in with family, save money, it's smart, and in real life, it might be smart. But SSI adds a catch. If moving in means you're no longer paying for your own food and shelter in the way SSI defines it, your SSI can drop. So you might save $600 in rent, but lose $322 in SSI, or lose up to $342 under PMV. And then you're stuck doing the most depressing kind of math. Did that kindness cost me more than it helped? That's the quiet cruelty of these rules. They turn relationships into calculations. They make you think twice before accepting help. They incentivize isolation, because living alone can be safer for your check, even when living alone is the most expensive option. Now, there are ways people avoid or minimize reductions, not by gaming the system, by understanding what the system is looking for. One big concept is your share. If you live with other people, SSI cares whether you're paying your fair share of food and shelter expenses. Because if you're paying your share, you may be treated as living in your own household, even inside someone else's home. That's why some people create a clear rental agreement. That's why they keep receipts. That's why they pay a set amount consistently, not randomly. Not because they love paperwork, because SSI loves paperwork. And without it, SSA can assume support is being provided. Another concept is rebutting the PMV, which brings us to the uncomfortable hidden mechanism people miss. Most of your Social Security destiny is decided by consistency, not intensity. A single monster earning year doesn't save a weak record. A short career with gaps gets punished by zeros. And the biggest raise you can often create isn't a secret program. It's replacing low-earning years in your top 35 with higher-earning years and making a deliberate claiming age choice instead of a panicked one. And yes, that sounds boring, but boring is powerful, because the system rewards what's steady. Now zoom out with me, because this is the part that should make you slightly uneasy. Social Security was designed in a world where careers were more linear. Work for decades, climb slowly, retire, but the modern economy is messy. Gig work, caregiving breaks, contract work, under-the-table work that never gets reported. People leaving the workforce to care for family, then returning later. It's the government is inside our household awkward. And now the last piece, the one nobody wants to think about until it happens. If you don't report these changes and SSA later finds out, through a review, a redetermination, paperwork, anything, you can end up with an overpayment notice. That letter is a whole other kind of stress. It's not just a number, it's a threat to stability, because SSI can reduce future checks to recover that overpayment. So a rule you didn't understand can become a debt you can't afford. And the wildest part, most people didn't do anything wrong in the moral sense. They got help, they tried to stay alive, they tried to stay indoors. So if you're on SSI, living arrangements are not just where you sleep, they're a lever that can raise or lower your monthly income based on who bought the groceries and whose name is on the lease. And if that sounds too invasive to be real, that's because it is. So here's the question I want to leave you with, because it's not a simple one, and the system doesn't answer it for you. In a world where rent forces people to combine households, where family support is the difference between housing and a shelter bed? Why does the safety net treat community like a deduction? And if SSI is supposed to protect the most vulnerable, what happens when the rules quietly punish the very thing that keeps them afloat?